Not every sanctuary is sacred. Not every nun prayed with her hands. Some hid more than prayers between their fingers. What I'm about to tell you is not found in textbooks. It's not spoken of in Mass, nor shown in medieval documentaries. Because there's a place, or rather there was, called the Convent of St. Aurelia, which was quietly erased from the official records of the Catholic Church. In 2007, a group of restoration workers discovered an old wooden reliquary, sealed and forgotten beneath the main altar. Inside, among bones and worn medals, was a manuscript wrapped in linen cloth. The barely legible Latin title read, Confessiones Clarae Sine Lux. But who was Clara, and why was her name scratched out of the abbey's logs? Clara was sent to the convent at 19 years old, not out of vocation but convenience. Her father, a bankrupt merchant, offered his daughter as a way to secure grace and forgiveness for the family. But Clara was never meek. Her words, right from the opening lines of the manuscript, are sharp. They told me we would find God here, but all I found were closed eyes and locked doors. She described the convent as a perfumed prison. The windows didn't face the world, but rather an inner courtyard where, under the pretext of meditation, some sisters would receive unexpected visitors in hooded cloaks. And no, they weren't pilgrims. What developed there, Clara called the Pact of Silence. Nuns who secretly engaged with local nobles, receiving small indulgences, fine fabrics, sweets, even perfumes. All of it, she claimed, with the discreet blessing of the Mother Superior. A sin with purpose, as she once overheard in one of the convent's shadowed corridors. But what strikes most is how Clara positioned herself. She didn't play the victim, but neither did she stay silent. And if you believe that stories like this deserve to step out of the shadows, do what many would rather you didn't. Subscribe to this channel. Clara knew that what she was writing could come at a high cost. Each page scribbled in the middle of the night was an act of defiance. But it was on a September night, when rain struck the stone windows and the silence was so deep even sin seemed to be asleep, that she made the decision that would change everything. She started naming names. She wasn't naive. She knew that within that convent there weren't just fragile and grieving women. There was also strategy, hierarchy, manipulation. In that place of forced prayers and rigid fasting, power did not belong to the one who prayed loudest, but to the one who knew exactly when to stay silent. Clara, barely past her 20s, broke that pact. She wrote about Father Theobald, a priest who visited St. Aurelia every Friday night under the pretense of offering confessions. According to the manuscript, he had a reserved space in the back of the sacristy where he received one sister at a time, always with no witnesses. Clara said many returned from there with downcast eyes, others with small objects hidden in their habit pockets. But what disturbed her most was the way the Mother Superior referred to him, our angel of indulgence. In one of the darkest sections, Clara recounts what she saw after waking in the night to fetch water. A nun, whom she only identified as Sister T, walking silently through the corridor, her tunic partially open, holding a candle in her hand. Clara followed her with a pounding heart, and through the crack of the sewing room door, she saw something she would never forget. Two bodies, one in a cassock, one in a veil, entwined, in silence, in a ritual that should have been impossible within those sacred walls. The next day, she pretended nothing had happened, but she kept writing. And that is why we have these pages now. Later in the diary, Clara describes an even crueler practice, the White Penance Room. It was a small, windowless cellar where nuns who asked too many questions or refused to participate in hidden activities were locked away for days. They received only water and stale bread. Some came out, changed, Others never came out at all. And it was always explained as a spiritual attack from the enemy. The convent of St. Aurelia wasn't just a place of distorted faith. It was a carefully staged theater where, behind the psalms and promises, a cult of absolute submission was being performed. She started to notice that someone had been reading her pages. One sheet from the diary had been torn out. Sister Marcella, who used to smile at her in the dining hall, began to avoid her. The Mother Superior summoned her for a fraternal conversation and asked her one direct question. "What is it you've been writing so much, my child?" Clara lied. She said they were prayers, reflections, that she was seeking comfort in words. The mother smiled and replied, "Then keep writing, but remember, some truths are dangerous even for those who uncover them." From that moment on, the tone of the diary shifted. Clara began writing like someone racing against time. Her sentences became sharper, the descriptions more urgent, as if she knew the end was near. Now tell me, if you were in her place, surrounded by fear, control, and eyes that watched your every move, would you have the courage to keep writing? Or would you hide the truth to protect your life? 3 weeks after that venomous conversation with the Mother Superior, Clara vanished. Officially, they said she had been transferred to another convent due to mental health concerns. But no letters reached her family. No records were signed. No other convent ever confirmed her arrival. The truth is, Clara never left St. Aurelia. The manuscript we found ends abruptly. The final sentence, written in shaky handwriting with faded ink, says only, "If tomorrow never comes, let someone at least read." We never found out what happened to her body, but we did learn what happened to her memory. It was buried, erased, crossed out from the archives, replaced with silence and vague excuses. The convent remained active for another 11 years, until a fire, whose cause was never determined, consumed much of the structure. Local authorities labeled it an accident, but a few villagers nearby tell a different story. They say that on that night, before the flames reached the altar, a woman's voice was heard singing through the chapel, in Latin with strength, like someone who refused to be silenced any longer. Today, over 2 centuries later, the stones of that place still remain, covered in moss and silence. But Clara is more alive than ever, because truth has a kind of resurrection that no institution can suppress. And now that you've heard her story, you have a choice. You can close this video and move on as if nothing was said. Or you can become the keeper of her name, the echo she never had while alive. We grew up believing that faith meant obedience, that questioning was sin, that evil lived outside the walls. But what happens when evil takes root inside sacred grounds? When those who suffer the most are the ones who believed the most? How many Claras were silenced? How many pages still lie hidden? That's why this channel exists. Not to attack, but to remember. To remind the world that what is sacred is not enforced silence, but lived truth. That every erased story holds a flame waiting to be given voice. And sometimes the loudest scream comes from a whisper written 200 years ago, afraid but full of faith. Now tell me honestly, if you'd lived back then, locked within walls that masked oppression as holiness, would you have spoken out? Or would you have written everything down like Clara, hoping someone someday would find it? Tell me. Because every comment below is like lighting a candle for the forgotten. And if you believe the world needs more voices like hers, be part of this now. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Share this story with someone you know will understand. Because this isn't just a video, it's a memorial.